well, welcome to this week's episode of Watershed Talks. How you doing, Tim?
I'm doing well. It's cold out.
Oh, good. We didn't get a word that nobody knows what it means this week. Salubrious. I don't even know what you said. I know it was an S with a lot of syllables. But anyways, you're doing good. We survived the brutal cold, think. Do you think we're going to get another brutal snap?
Is that what we're supposed to get?
Are we okay? No, I think we're maybe had the worst of it. I mean, I know my homeland is coming out of their worst. They're the only weekend of winter that they have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But
shut them down,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think my buddy went into work today and nobody was there. So, yeah.
Whoa.
But, yeah, they don't know what to do with 20 degrees. So
yeah, it's 20 degrees.
As it's negative 20.
Yeah, a friend of mine was trying to FaceTime me yesterday, and his Wi-Fi was out, and it's like, well, it's to be expected.
And everyone can hear that we have Matt.
Yeah, Matt.
Oh yeah,
hi, Matt.
hello, I'm here.
And didn't mean to cut off your Wi-Fi story, but how are you?
Stupendous.
Oh, stupendous.
Yeah,
okay, you're stupendous. And I'm doing mighty fine. I'll go with mighty fine. All right. Well, what are we talking about today, Tim?
All right. So we are continuing on in our mental health series, and today we're talking about boundaries.
Okay. Setting boundaries. So do you want to tell us what that means, or do you want to go to the Bible first?
Yeah. So we are focusing on boundaries, and boundaries are basically building up walls or giving yourself permission to not be with somebody else. So oftentimes as Christians, we think that, we have to be loving, we have to invite everybody into our life and, be welcoming and all this other stuff. But there are actually biblical examples of people actually saying, you know what, you can, I'm going to love you, but I'm not going to allow you access to certain portions of my life. And what I found is that that's a very hard thing for many people to do, to set up those boundaries. But the way that I phrased it in the sermon is that each one of us is only given a finite amount of mental energy, social energy, and
I think they call it like a social battery.
Is that
today?
That'd be a
like
good way?
I've heard kids say like I need to recharge my social battery.
I like that,
or something like that. Yeah,
and the same is true with like our mental health, emotional health, and things like that.
Right.
And so what we do is oftentimes with these people who get into our life, they can be kind of energy drainers.
Yeah,
and
I think you called it an energy vampire.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So for those of you if you've ever watched What We Do in the Shadows, there's an energy vampire there.
I haven't seen that one, but I know what show you're talking about. Okay. I just haven't seen it.
So. It's hilarious. So side note. So he's a different kind of different kind of vampire, and what he does is he gains energy just by draining your energy.
Sure.
So they show him in the office workplace, and he's like, "So Joseph, how you doing today?" Yeah. And you just see these people just falling asleep. And then the other one is he's like, the other way that I do this is I troll on the internet.
Oh, right.
And, he's like, it's not the purest form of energy, but I get quite a bit.
Yeah. dirty trolling energy from the internet. Okay.
But that's the kind of thing like a lot of people in our life, they pull energy from us. Mm-hmm. And, oftentimes they don't know they don't know they're doing it, but a lot of times it comes from them being hurt themselves.
I think it's, so I guess a couple of things for me right off the bat. One, I agree with you. This is a needed thing to talk about because I have watched many Christians over the years confuse the sort of command or the call to unconditional love and continual forgiveness to mean that they're a doormat, and they just have to keep putting up with the worst abuse and the worst treatment, and that's really is a confusion. It's a conflation of two different concepts, and one doesn't mean you need to be the other. Right. Just because you need to find a way to let go. Continually, forgive doesn't mean you need to give people access, just wide open. And I think, the other thing is, it's not that that you're never there for someone that needs some of that energy. I mean, I do tend to think of, I'm influenced by the Christian mystics, and so I tend to think of what kind of energy am I bringing to a room, and I tend to hope that I bring one that lifts up and people who are having a down day. But I think it's if it's just always that way, right? It's not like it's that it's never reciprocated. It's just it's always this one-way draining.
Right. Yeah.
Is that kind of what you
Yeah,
mean?
because you're right. There are certain
gonna be-
situations where, like, even in like a marriage or a relationship, they're going to have a bad day.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're going to have to step in and say, okay, I'm going to take a lot of my mental, physical energy. I'm going to give it to them in a way.
And that's a good and healthy and an overall equitable relationship. But if it's totally one way,
Right.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, you want to get us into the actual story? We're in Nehemiah.
Yep. So we're going to go with Nehemiah chapter 2, verse 19. And there's going to be two scriptures that I read off today, but I'm going to give you the other scriptures as I go, so that way if you want to look at them, you can.
Can I give the thing I like to give, which is the really fast sort of where we're at in the life of the Israelites here?
Yep.
So this is the return. So when you study the Old Testament, you quickly begin to realize that the books of the Old Testament can be broken up into pre-exilic, which means before the exile, during the exile, or post-exilic, or sometimes called the return. And the only real books that we have of the return are Ezra, Nehemiah, maybe some of Isaiah at the end. And I could be missing one or two, but it's not very many that we have of the return. And definitely the main ones is the story of Ezra and Nehemiah, where they're allowed to come back. It's after a generation or so of being exiled to Babylon.
Yep.
And they're coming back home, and they're going to do some of what we're learning today.
Yeah.
So now take it from there.
Yeah,
So.
it's exhilarating. Yeah. All right. So Nehemiah 2:19. So when Sanballat and Tobiah, and Geshem the Arab heard of it, this is them starting to build up the wall. They jeered at us and despised us and said, "What is this thing that you're doing? Are you rebelling against the king?" So right here we have our three enemies, and they're kind of like, think of a schoolyard bully. Now they might be decent people, but they have power, they have influence, and basically you're playing in my sandbox. You're building up a wall. What are you doing here? We don't like you here. And so they're bullying him already. All right. And then Nehemiah replied to them, "The God of heaven will make us prosper, and we, his servants, will arise and build, but you have no portion or right or claim in Jerusalem." So that's the boundary.
Yeah, the Sanballat guy, we don't know 100%, but there's a good case that he was the mayor or governor of Samaria.
Oh, really?
At the time. And then, if I remember right, the Geshem dude was he was in charge of a lot of trade routes.
Okay.
And so this sort of, hey, what are you doing? You're gonna mess up my norm.
Yeah.
You know. And Nehemiah's response is, hush.
Yeah. That's really
Get
interesting.
over
I
it.
didn't come across that in the research.
I mean, it's you can't prove for sure. There's so many tiny little bits of information about this level of people, but maybe it's kind of interesting to think of that extra layer of what's going on.
And so what's I thought was kind of neat, and might be making it up, but the very first wall that Nehemiah builds as he's going through this project is actually a wall between him and them. It's a boundary.
Right.
And so I thought, well, how cool is that? There's this emotional boundary that's put up before the physical boundary is put up.
Right. And I think, this might be a moment to say with any of these truths, there's a way to go really far to one side or the other. And we were describing a minute ago where we need to have boundaries, and we don't set those up, and we become Christian doormats, and we're walked on and abused. That's way over here. Another one is if you never let anyone in,
Right.
or somebody, you let someone in, and all they have to do is one thing, and you cut them out completely, or go around gossiping about them, and you don't make any effort for any reconciliation. I mean, just one strike,
right.
Or you just have that wall, which I see a lot of people have today, where it's just. It's just no all the time to everybody. You're just never, and I think either side of that.
But that wall, oftentimes where you're like, no, you cut everybody out, oftentimes that comes from a place of hurt because you've been hurt so many times before.
Yeah, I understand it.
Yeah.
But it isn't, it's kind of two extremes where what we're trying, I think what God's trying to bring us to is somewhere in this healthy middle.
Sure.
Yeah. So,
and I think that's one of those things where it can be difficult for us as people to trust other people, especially like when we've been, we've encountered people who are toxic or unhealthy or you know whatever it is in their past.
Yeah, I'm kind of dumb. I keep trusting people. I don't know. Man. It's just the way I'm wired. So I've always been the way where you have to prove to me that I shouldn't trust you. Whereas like my wife, bless her heart, who's probably more normal, is you have to prove that she can trust you. And that's probably more the norm. It's probably healthier. I mean, it's definitely less naive.
So it's funny that you say that because that's the exact same way that my wife and I are too. I tend to lean on the side of trusting people, but I've been in ministry now, and we were kind of talking about this before the podcast, but I've been in ministry for about 16 years now, and I think you actually got me beat. But one of the things that I find...
pastoral, though. You got me.
But like when you are a person who has, you know, some bit of power or authority or prestige or something, and you're a healthy relationship, then certain people will gravitate toward you.
Right.
And so our ministry, we could actually basically earmark it, I guess, each year and say, well, this was the time we had this couple who tried to befriend us and then turned into... Yeah. And then, I mean, there's always been and there always will be people who come into your life, at least with my wife and I, where you think everything's good and it sounds good and then something happens.
Yeah. And then the challenge ends up being, how do you, you know, and I think Scripture wants this. How do you learn wisdom from that?
Yeah.
So that you listen to the discernment that you need to listen to and not be on this extreme, but not become cynical and just hardened. You know, Matt, as the younger guy at the table, I'm curious, like, do you have in your church life journey, do you have these moments where you've had some wounds, you've had some people turn out to, that, you know, you had to put a wall up? You've been active in church.
I've been active
helping
my whole
in
life.
Church and leading in some laity-led leadership position for a while.
Yeah.
You don't consider yourself a pastor, but you've been very much in a church journey for a while. So have you had to put up a wall, or do you have a wound here or there?
I'm sure I do. I can't think of like a 100% example.
Okay, then you haven't had a real one yet.
Yeah.
I'm just playing.
No, well, I mean, once it hits you, it's just like, oh wow. And
well, yeah, I mean, I think I read that the church wound is right as deep as the parental wound, or just right next. You know, those wounds that are so tough to deal with and formative in a unfortunate, tough way. You know, obviously the father wound, mother wound can be the deepest, but it may be spousal, but church is like right in there.
Because it's like family.
I mean, it's hard. It is hard. So what happens next with Nehemiah?
All right. So then we're going to go into Nehemiah chapter 4,
all right,
and they're going to come back. All right.
Okay.
And so then they attack him again. They're like, hey, this wall, you know, a fox could knock it down. Okay.
So at this point in the story, they've built the wall some. Okay.
Right.
So first it was he hadn't even started, and they're already nitpicking him, and then they built the wall some, and now they're going to come and just be salty
mock
and shady.
him?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they're knocking not the wall down, they're knocking them down. Like they're trying to like
their confidence down. Their
right. Yeah. And
passion
attacking
to build it, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Kind of like it's an identity attack. Like, oh, look at that. And then they come back. And so then the next time that they come forward, they are plotting against them, and they're basically saying that they're going to use some kind of threat. And the threat actually works because the people who are there, they start to lose a lot of the energy. And Nehemiah is like, let's trust God, but also carry a sword with you.
Okay. Oh, right. This is that classic sort of building with one hand, sword in the other.
Right.
Okay.
So then they are still threatening, you know, and so one of the things that's kind of neat here is you look at this and they're threatening violence, but they never become violent. So they're bluffing, but it still does the trick, you know. So threatening violence
is violent. If you live with the threat of violence, you're living with violence.
Right.
I mean,
that's true.
Like, it's just period. I mean, I would say the same thing about, I mean, not to get too like super serious here, but it's serious topics. So, I mean, if you think about a relationship that lives with the threat of like adultery, aren't you basically living with like the shadow of that? I mean, it's the same thing with violence, I think. So it works.
It does.
So how do they come out of it?
Yeah. So Nehemiah, he's a great leader. One of the things that he practices is emotional regulation. So he doesn't immediately go to fight or flight. Oh my gosh, they're going to kill us, catastrophizing and getting all worried. He says, okay, first we're going to pray. And so what prayer does is it actually slows down your brain, and it actually allows you to become human again, because prayer will actually literally slow down the way you breathe, the way you think. And so that gives your brain time to move from the old portion of the brain, which is that fight or flight, to the frontal lobe, which is the part of the brain that actually makes us human.
So that, I think we've said before, it's like you're enabling yourself to respond instead of being sucked into a reaction.
Exactly.
I've thought about that. This may or may not be on topic, but I've thought about a good bit of how much just the quality of speed it has such an impact on conflict.
Oh yeah.
That if you can just slow things down, like all you do is just slow things down, because I mean, just think about like arguments that you've gotten in, or maybe just your own internal mental, like if you ever have your mind just racing, it's just can we, so prayer, like you're saying, it just if we could just slow down, how much a help that is.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a wall, but it's helpful in maybe knowing what the wall should be. I don't know.
Well, I think when you do slow down, it gives you a better understanding of what's really going on, because what you see is those three guys, I think they're like, okay, what do we need to do to get him to stop this? And so they're like agitated, and so they're fighting.
Yeah.
And then the Israelites, that's the other group, and they're trying to run away from it. It's fight or flight. And so they're like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
But then you have Nehemiah, and he's this kind of bright light in it, because he's the only one in this whole story, other than God, who is, got his head on straight.
Yeah.
And he can think and he can process, and he's like, oh, okay, so this is happening. Therefore, let's wear a sword, let's protect things. And then he goes back to their why. And so in verse 14.
Yeah, sorry, I'm thinking of a way that it is a wall, but go ahead.
Yeah. So in Nehemiah 4:14, what he does is he says, remember the Lord, okay? And then the second thing is, do this for your family, for your homes. And so he gives the why we're doing it. And so he's trying to kind of impute that rational thought, like, okay, let's be rational. Let's remember why we're doing this, and not focus so much on the fear. It's there, but we'll deal with that when it comes.
Yeah, we have someone in our church that has a career in the military, and he has a presence, and I've heard him say a couple times when I don't know, maybe I was getting antsy, or maybe just the room felt that way or something, certain tensions building. And like after the fact, I've heard him say like, yeah, that stuff really, that kind of thing doesn't really get me going, because like nobody's shooting at me, and it's like, so it can't be that bad. Right.
Yeah.
And I almost feel like Nehemiah's a little bit of that quality here, and how important it is as a really a Christian, but maybe a leader or both, to have that kind of presence in people's lives, where you can show that, I don't know, like, don't you think that's a little bit of that piece that goes beyond all understanding? You're just sort of like not rocked so easily,
right?
Like you're just sort of stable,
and that doesn't come from just us. It comes. It's a spiritual nature of being able to transcend the situation.
I mean, how many connect to that cosmic eternal perspective? How many times have I been just like racked with? I'm an emotional person, so I don't know if y'all are like this, but I when I feel very big. I have big feelings, and it'll keep me up at night. And I just look back on my life, and like, how many times has God been like, just like, kind of chuckling, in a loving way, like this isn't that big a deal, Joseph. Like, you're not even going to remember it in a week, you know, like.
And you're like, but God, the crumb wasn't right this time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's talking about bread. Yeah, that's one of them. Oh, I will feel like a failure so fast if what I'm working on. Do y'all have that? Have you ever tried to like put something together and it's not working? Do you get? Yeah, that's like is that just a Leggett man thing where it's just like it's not working?
No, I think we all get that.
Yeah. We all get that. Yeah. But the other thing I was going to say is that I do see it as a way of a kind of mental wall, in that, and everything we're describing is like, okay, the way I've heard it phrased is like, I'm not going to give them like, maybe you would call it access or like any power.
Exactly.
I'm gonna not let their circus be mine. They're out there. They're outside the wall of my identity or personal mental space. Like, I'm not going to let them have power over that. I'm not going to let them stir it up.
Yep.
And Nehemiah is kind of exhibiting that
exactly
here. Yeah. So
what is that phrase? Is it not my circus?
Not my circus,
something like that,
or like they're can of monkeys or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I just made that one up.
Yeah.
But,
but it's so true.
It means it's the same point.
Yeah, it's like we're not going to give you the power to control our life, and really that's one of the things that boundaries do. It's like, you're trying all this stuff, but I'm rubber, you are glue. Just I'm.
There we go. Everything I needed to know, I learned at first grade.
Right. And Jesus loves you. This I know. So then what we have is we go on to chapter 6, and so.
Oh, but you're skipping such a cool part.
Which one?
Well, chapter 5.
Oh,
that's a wall.
Okay, yeah, go for it.
Is that okay?
Yeah, go for it.
Just because when you were preaching, it hit
That's
me.
right. Yeah.
And I know you don't have time in a sermon. I mean, you find a way to shove way more scripture than I would ever.
Okay, today we're going to go over the New Testament.
Yeah, but no, I just was thinking like, because in chapter 5 he establishes, he recognizes that there's like this completely unfair amount of like interest, and there's just people that are being held down economically, because they just cannot possibly pay these loans back. And there's like interest on interest, and I mean, I'm not enough of a money guy to explain it all, but their literal children are being sold into slavery to pay these debts, and they're just like, we can't get out from under this, And so he just essentially wipes all the debt away. He goes to the people that are, the ones holding those banknotes or whatever they are, the IOUs,
of the day,
whatever they would have been, and he's like, look at what you're doing to your people, and he just senselessly, he basically cancels the debt, which the Jewish calendar has every so many years where they wipe debt away anyways. But I just thought like that kind of was a wall setting. It was kind of like, stop reaching into their pockets. You're literally reaching so far that you're taking their children. Like, it's enough. Like, I don't know, am I stretching it that that's a wall in a way of like give your brother and sister, your people here, that we're all Jewish people here, let them, give them a chance, like get out of their homes actually. I mean, I don't know, is that a stretch?
Well, no, I'm trying to remember. Give me a second.
That's okay.
I remember we were talking about this on text message.
Yeah. But do you get what I'm saying? Like, as far as
kind of, yeah.
I mean, I would, in a way, he's establishing like an economic wall in order to give the people on the bottom tier of their society a chance. But anyways.
Well, and so I looked back at my text message when I was actually thinking clearly, and one of the things when we're talking about this, Nehemiah doesn't like bullies. And so he's
there you go.
He's creating that wall so that they can't bully the Jewish people themselves. And so the Jewish people really had no power or authority to do anything about these lenders. And so Nehemiah, with his power and authority, he's able to say, all right, here's the standard. Here's the wall that we're going to create so that they're protected as well from our own people, which is actually kind of true, because sometimes in our churches, like the ones who hurt us the most are the ones on the inside, even in our families too.
Yeah. So. And I did like, though, how, if I remember right, he makes a plea to their heart and their compassion for them, but then he also does use his authority to just say, okay, it's done. But I think they agree. But so I don't know. I mean, keep going, chapter 6, but I had never thought of him doing that as like, this is another way that he's setting walls for a healthy society,
right? And the Jewish people themselves created all these healthy boundaries and kind of guardrails for living, which we see in our society today, which is incredible.
Really, it really is. Yeah. So
all right, so then we have Nehemiah chapter 6, and then here's the fun one. They're like, hey, would you like to come meet with us? And
Okay.
You know, they're not getting any traction with Nehemiah, and Nehemiah's like, hey, you know what? I'm doing great work, and I'm sorry I can't come down.
Just for those following along, we're talking now about the original three dudes,
the three guys
that were taunting them.
Yep.
Okay, so now he's inviting them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, they're inviting Nehemiah.
Oh, they're inviting Nehemiah.
To a meeting.
Okay.
And we don't know what the meeting's about. I've always thought that they want to kill him. You know, like at the meeting.
Right.
And so he's like, nope, I'm good. And then they're like, hey, let's meet. So second ask, no, I'm pretty busy here. And then third ask, it's
I'm
like,
good.
But yeah, and by the third time, you know, you start wondering, am I making too big of a deal of this? Should I just go? You know, most of us would kind of second guess ourselves because when somebody's persistent, it has a way of wearing us down, but not Nehemiah.
Okay.
And so he says, nope, doing great work. Can't be bothered. And so the next thing that happens is on the fifth time, they come with this open letter. And this open letter is really this intimidation practice. They're going to send it to the king. They're going to like spread these rumors that Nehemiah is trying to.
Has gossiping via like viral bullying always existed? Basically,
Right.
is this
Yes.
like the social version of gossip and bullying?
If you don't do this, I'm going to make up this story about you. And
Man.
you know what was nice is they did it to his face instead of just you know most people anymore. It's like, I'm going to make up a story and I'm not going to tell you about it and not confront you. But so that's what they do. And
people need to get a life.
I know.
But anyways, keep going. Sorry.
I think we struck something there with you. Would you like to say more?
I do wonder at times how I don't have enough time to have these kind of things going on about other people in my life. You know, I just don't know. Like, do people just not have enough to do, or enough of a purpose or a sense of things? Like, how do you have the wherewithal and the space to do all this against someone? I've got too much to do. I don't know. I know that sounds braggy, but I just literally like wonder, like, man, and I guess to get a little sincere with it, I do wonder, like, man, if they had a purpose, if they had a real purpose, if they were living that out, I bet a lot of this would fall away. But anyways,
well, I think you're right.
I mean,
because
not to get too real, but like the stuff that happened to you.
Yeah.
I mean, whoever that was, like, just like what. Just don't you have like, what is going on in your life that you have the space to think of those kind of ways to attack someone in a community,
right?
You know.
Well, and you know, one of the things that I found in life is we do have to have a purpose and we have to have meaning. And oftentimes, you know, when somebody retires and they say, I'm going to retire and I'm going to, you know, just wake up when I want to, I'm going to do, you know, that's great for about 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then after that, it's like, oh, I'm just so miserable. And then you share that miserable feeling with everybody else. And especially if somebody kind of shines, we want to extinguish their shine.
Whoa. Not to keep going on rabbit holes here,
Yeah.
but have you ever studied the Blue Zones? There was like a book that came out and it was really cool. I thought it was a guy. I think it was the 5 areas in the world that have the longest average lifespan. So they have more like centenarians, you know, people that live over 100 than anywhere else. And he just went and looked like what is common among them to just, you know, turn around and say, hey, everybody do this in life, you know, so you can live longer.
Answer.
Well, there was the diet was a part of it. So like there was beans was common, a lot less meat, a little bit of alcohol, actually, just a little. But related to what you were talking about, the retirement was very active.
Right.
It was live in the home, help take care of the grandkids, do the garden,
work as long as possible.
It was
too.
a lot. It was that, and then like even in retirement, there was a lot of quote unquote work. It was just work with like the babies and the garden and walking around and stuff. And
I thought you were going to say cigarettes, beer, scratchers.
No.
Bitterness.
But it. You know, because I mean, I do think it's common that people who have nothing in that retirement phase, that there are anecdotal evidence that you know they die fairly quickly.
People living a long life. I'm just reminded of Dick Van Dyke and how he just turned 100 this end of the past year. And one of the quotes,
Love that guy.
Yeah,
I don't know, I can't say it verbatim, but one of the things he said, part of the reason he lived so long is, you know, not retired, but then he also talked about how his dad, I guess, died at like 70, I could be wrong, but in his 70s, and he was just a hard man, and so he learned from that to be joyful.
Mm.
And so, not retire and be happy
Yeah.
is two good things,
Well, and here's one thing that I've found is that oftentimes this sounds awful, but if you wake up and you don't have somewhere like you need to be, and you have these other people who are they have relationships or marriages where the spouse and them, they just don't get along, or they just live loveless lives, then oftentimes that will turn into a bitterness that is pervasive within their life. And
like misery loves company kind of thing.
kinda, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think what it boils down to is like we will scapegoat and distract ourselves from dealing with our real pain and wounds, and it's not. I don't think it's totally off the mark to flip this around. The whole conversation has been looking at us setting boundaries for ourselves, but sometimes it is worthwhile to consider what's going on in the people's lives that you need to set boundaries from.
Yeah.
I really commend you at the end of your sermon. You said they're not evil. They're not, these aren't bad people. They're hurting people. And you use that phrase, hurting people hurt people.
Right.
And it's just really true. But I think it's really important to do this in the Christian spirit of love for them. It's just this is the best thing to do for both of you.
It is.
Because enabling it is just, in other words, no boundaries enables that behavior. So really, but it's not out of a hateful spirit. And, whatever's going on in their life that got them there, I don't think it's un-PC or bad to think about like, man, let me be a little empathetic and put myself in their shoes a little bit. I still need that wall.
Yeah.
I mean, right. But, I'm going through that with my dad, my stepdad, but he's the dad that raised me. I haven't talked to him in, I think other than one phone call, like 5 to 7 years. And the once a year Father's Day text, and I just had to get that distance from him. And, just to be real, my parents are going through, divorce right now, and it's really, really difficult on the rest of my brothers and sisters because there's all this ugliness and blah, blah, blah. But one of the blessings I've had is I've been able to have some of that distance, and, I don't hate him. I can actually love him through this because I put up that wall when I did years ago. And, I'm not going to take that wall down, but if he were to reach out and did want to talk or something, I would, at least in a way be able to be better equipped, to whatever the right balance would be. But if that makes sense, like I'm in a unique position of like, I'm not, I'm distant from him, but I don't hate him. I'm actually praying for him through this, and the only way I've been able to do that is that wall. So anyway, I'm going on and on about my life. But
that's exactly what we're talking about here is, I think being able to establish these walls helps us to love unlovable people.
Yeah.
And it sounds awful when you say it like that, but at the same time, there's a lot of brokenness in our world. And, I know within my family, there's a lot of mental health issues, a lot of trauma, a lot of indifference. And so I've had to construct walls in my family too, so that I don't get resentful and I kind of lower my expectations. And the other thing too is it allows you to have a little bit more control, because oftentimes if you're a person who's kind of unhealthy or a little bit toxic, then you thrive off of having control of another person. But you can take that away if you're establishing a wall, and you can say, here's how the relationship is going to work. And that's actually really healthy to do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one lesson I learned and this took years and therapy and God and all sorts of stuff, was that I was toxic because I had done what we started out saying. I was on that extreme of being a doormat. And so I was in my own way unhealthy and toxic because I, whatever. But I just, I had confused what it meant to be a Christian and all the things we said at the beginning. But it was my own, just brokenness that I needed to take time.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, I think we live in a time where the idea of walls and boundaries, there really is some voices out there that say that we shouldn't have those at all. And, I think it was was either Brueggemann or it was Kidner, so forgive me if I'm quoting the wrong one, but he was looking at this story in the Old Testament, and he said that, before this wall, the city was an idea, and after this wall, it became a reality.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
That's
And
good.
I just think about that in terms of like, as we're growing up and we're trying to become the adult Christians, hopefully, right? That God wants us to be. Like, so much of that is just figuring out who we are and being like taking the potential of who we are and making it a reality.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people out there, I'm one of them, have got to that place late in the game because of not having these walls. So
Yeah.
I think it's a really good sermon to bring around and an idea to think of. So what would be some practices just to bring us to a close? So I don't think we're telling people to erase all their contacts in their phone
No.
and not answer. Pastor Tim and Joseph said,
Just give up on them.
So, what would we think might be somehow?
I thought I had early on was to be able to say no.
Well, that kind of was what your sermon said a little.
So again, that not saying no to everything. Real life example, I have a friend he was my childhood best friend, and we're still friends kind of now. The door's kind of been opened up again, where we play video games together, and I've had to say like no whenever he calls me, and I'm like not wanting to play. I don't want to play all the time.
Right.
It's like, dude, it's the middle of the day.
Yeah.
I don't want to be playing video games all day.
Yeah. But that's that's a specific moment of that social battery that need to recharge, right? So okay, so look for places to say no. Tim, do you have a
Yeah, so what I think is we need to give ourselves permission, and so what we oftentimes do is like you were saying, it's like, oh, I feel so bad for doing that. No, give yourself permission. You need to, you only have so much energy within your life, only so much to give. And so give yourself permission to say no to things that are, even good things in your life, so you can say yes to the great things in your life. And so
good.
well, it's not mine, it's good to great. And so I'm stealing it from somebody else. But the idea with it is, there are things that there's a hierarchy in each one of our lives. And a very healthy person will put, their faith at the very top. They'll put their health next. They'll put their spouse if they're married next, and then their kids, whatever. And then everybody else comes after that. And so often we flip that pyramid upside down, and we focus on all the people around us who need all these different things. And it's like, you know what? I feel for you, but a lot of times there's not a whole lot that I can do to help other people out in those kind of situations, because there's just such a great need, and oftentimes there's always another thing. And so you just have to realize that you have a finite amount of energy, so you have permission to say no.
Okay. I think for mine, I'm going to just go ahead and challenge people. I think whoever is listening to this, I think you've had an instinctual idea of which one of these extremes you are. So if you are the extreme of you never say no, then I think what y'all are saying is good. I am going to go ahead and challenge those, though, who are hearing this and they realize that they've got nothing but walls and no gates in the walls and no, I'm going to challenge you to look for a way to make that you have a healthy wall system, because we've been saying this, there's balance here. And so if all you're doing is saying yes, start practicing saying no. But if all you're doing is saying no, find somewhere, I would say the church. But anyways, find somewhere to to say yes to, and don't, that's just one. Just find one thing to be saying yes to, in your life, and that way you have you don't have no walls, but you don't have only walls.
I like that.
That's good.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, let this talk shape our walk.